Exceptional performance is not only about preparing the body, but also about preparing the mind. And to do that, we have to learn how to think. There is no wrong way of thinking. However, there is a way of thinking that will help you reach amazing heights in your life, which is exactly why in this video we are covering chapter 2 of the book Overachievement by Dr. John Elliott. I know that right now you might think, well, who are you to read about overachievement? You're nobody. And I understand. But before gang stalking was a thing that became a force in my life, I was at the top of my game and I was living by this book as if it was the Bible. I was making a lot of money. I was in the best shape of my life, and I had amazing friends. I was even getting recognized in the community in San Diego for being a top-notch personal trainer. I literally was the shizzle, and sadly, I simply suffered a conglomeration of narcissists because in the end, gang stalking harassment is literally organized narcissistic abuse. And thankfully, now that I understood the whole thing, I can go back to my roots. And for that to happen, I feel like I need a refreshment of what is it, how to think, because gang stalking literally restructures your way of thinking to the point where you lose your ability to think logically. It's not me giving you advice or telling you these things. It's what we're gonna cover in this chapter. It was written by John Elliott, who has a doctorate in high performance. I'm gonna read a little bit of the chapter to you, and then we're gonna discuss it a little bit. If there's anything in the video or any part that any story where you can identify with some of the things that we're covering, please write it in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe. If you're new here, hello, I am Efren Rodriguez Guerrero, fitness professional, and this video is the second chapter of the book that had the most amazing impact in my life. It's a great read. I highly recommend for you to buy it. And here we go. It goes as follows. La, 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 la. I'm just kidding. For decades, in surveys of what Americans fear most, the runaway number one answer is public speaking. People are actually more afraid of performing in front of others than they are of dying. Who hasn't been there? You step into the spotlight, your heart is pumping as if you're running a marathon. Your mouth has turned to cotton. Butterflies are using your stomach as your exercise room. Your armpits are faucets. Your hands or knees are dancing to an unknown drummer. Even if you succeed, the prospect of going through such an experience again causes even veteran performers to have the performance anxiety, aka stage fright. I don't care how huge a sports or drama fan you are, you don't want to be anywhere near a dressing room latrine before the big game or show. Actor Anthony Hopkins throws up before almost every appearance on stage. After a brief stint in a Broadway play, Jane Fonda announced she was quitting acting for good. She had become so anxious before each performance that she walked to the theater each night. I was praying I would get hit by a car. Little wonder what psychologists have devised all sorts of techniques to manage stress. Avoid them like the plague. Working on techniques to manage stress is a bit like trying to win the Indy 500 by putting a governor on the engine of your race car or swapping out a powerful V12 for a V4 because it offers a quieter ride. You wouldn't do that. Not if you were after the checkered flag. Not if you were racing star Jeff Gordon. No superstar is about to give his opponents an edge, nor should you be trying to relax when the pressure's on. Great performers welcome pressure. They thrive on it. Instead of trying to control or erase pressure, they use it as a kind of energy bar. The best players in any high-stakes field, business, entertainment, law, surgery, as well as sport, recognize that pressure occurs at the moments when meaningful accomplishment is possible. In fact, that is the reason why performers perform, for the opportunity to tackle challenges head on, to do something significant, to demonstrate what their talent and hard work can produce. Those who perform well consistently, the superstars, are always looking for the opportunity to take their game to the next level. Basically, what John Elliott is saying is that even some of the biggest performers get anxiety, get stage fright before jumping on stage. And managing stress is the equivalent of changing your big old 12-cylinder engine for a smaller engine. Managing stress is pretty much limiting your ability to perform. Stress is a good thing. It continues. This partnership with pressure is also the reason superstars tend to find an excuse to be absent when a psychologist visits. They know that their ability to perform consistently well has nothing to do with imagining themselves on a peaceful island, reminding themselves to be cool headed, or relaxing. They don't want to relax. For them, pressure is a doorway to success. To an exceptional performer, the term stress management is really an oxymoron. Show them someone lying on the floor with their eyes closed, trying to make the nerves go away, and they'll show you someone who is easy to beat. I was trained to help people perform well in anxiety perform provoking situations, but I won't be giving you any tips on how to relax. Too often, the techniques designed to allay stress become an obstacle to getting better. What is supposed to be a means to an end becomes an end in itself, and a good explanation for why a lot of teams that have hired psychologists still produce losing records. What I do is completely different from stress management. I see my job as improving a client's performance, and the challenge is pretty much the same. Whatever the venue, whether it's in the operating room, the concert stage, a sales call, the boardroom, or the playing fields. Over the years, I have discovered that I cannot enhance anybody's performance without getting them not only to live with the butterflies that come with high pressure jobs, but to embrace that kind of physical response. Enjoy it, get into it. That's the first real ticket to being a performer who thinks exceptionally. Let me tell you a story about how Bill Russell found that throwing up before a game was an asset. Okay, so let's see who is Bill Russell because I honestly have no idea. So I googled up Bill Russell throwing up, and this is what we see. Let's see. This is so interesting. So let me put first who's Bill Russell. Who's Bill Russell? Bill Russell was an American professional basketball player and civil rights activist who is widely regarded as one of the greatest players in the NBA history. He played for the Boston Celtics from 1956 to 1969, leading them to 11 championships in 13 seasons, and became the first black head coach in the NBA. He was 5-time MPV and 12-time All-Star, celebrated for his defensive and rebounding skills. Off the court, Russell was a leading voice in the struggle for civil rights and social justice. Wow. Okay, so let's see the whole thing about throwing up. Bill Russell would vomit before games due to high pressure performance anxiety. His intensity and expectations for himself and his teammates were so high that his pregame ritual was a well-known occurrence. And his teammates even viewed the sound of him vomiting as a good sign that he was ready to play. This is so crazy. This is insane, isn't it? Like, this is actually documented. Reason for vomiting. Russell experienced intense performance anxiety, a psychological stress from competitive pressure and high expectations. Impact on teammates. The sound of him vomiting was a familiar one for his teammates, who saw it as an indication that Russell was mentally prepared and ready for the game. This was actually well documented, guys. Coaching anecdote. There is a story that the legendary coach Red Yerbach once sent the team off the court and told them not to return until Russell had vomited, as he hadn't heard the sound yet and was concerned. This is so crazy. Will Chamberlain's perspective. His rival, Will Chamberlain, acknowledged Russell's seriousness by noting that he would throw up before games, a behavior Chamberlain did not understand as he viewed basketball more as a game than a life or death struggle. This is crazy. Looking here on the Truth Seekers journal that was just recently published, it says the sound of Bill Russell throwing up is a welcome sound too, because it means he's keyed up for the game. Wow. Okay, so let's continue. Bill Russell is one of the great names in basketball, an All-American from the University of San Francisco, and the only athlete to ever win an NCAA championship, an Olympic gold medal, and a professional championship all in the same year, in 1956. During the 1950s and 60s, Russell was the leader of a Boston Celtics dynasty that won 11 NBA championships in 13 years and was named by Sports Illustrated the greatest team of the century. Bill is regarded as the finest player team of all time. Few in the history of the game were as good as at both defense and offense. Few were as intelligent, and no one could match his infectious laugh. But Bill Russell had this one problem. He threw up before every game. Russell got so nervous in the locker room that he couldn't start a game without running to the closest stall to barf his guts out. The Celtics brought in a doctor to make sure that he would not only be dehydrated, and his fellow players enjoyed ribbing him about having to give up lunch before every contest. After all, they played in the NBA too, and they did not have to boot each night. But one evening, late in 1963-64 season, as Russell tells the story in his autobiography, Second Wind, the memoirs of an opinionated man, he walked into the Celtics locker room and realized for that the first time in his career he felt fine. He got ready for the game, and the other players looked at him with amazement. What about the vomiting ritual? Not today, said Russell. The clubhouse erupted with applause, commenting the veteran center for achieving one more career milestone. Not stinking up the place before tip-off, Russell collected his high fives and headed out onto the floor of the Boston Garden and played the worst game of his career. He was flat, slow on defense, lethargic. Bill Russell was, well, not Bill Russell. The pattern continued as the season wore down. He'd show up at the Garden, feel fine, relax, no need to vomit, and then go out and play poorly. The Boston press hammered him. Russell's slump causes Celtics another loss. The legend finally loses his touch. Screamed the headlines. The notoriously ungenerous Boston sports fans wondered, is Russell's career over? Russell began to wonder if they were right. The Celtics of those days also featured such other future Hall of Famers as Bob Cousy and Tommy what? Heinsohn. I don't know how to pronounce that. Not to mention John Havlicek, Frank Ramsey, and C.K. Jones. So the team coasted into the postseason, but with a seeming lull in performance after 7 NBA championships in a row. The press was grinding its teeth. Can the Celtics repeat without Russell? Game I arrived. Russell showed up 3 hours before the 7 p.m. start game, hoping to avoid fans and the media, only to find a line of boisterous. Hang on, how do I pronounce that?
Boisterous.
Boisterous. What does that mean? Of a person, event, or behavior, energetic and cheerful. I had never heard this word before. Boisterous.
Boisterous.
Boisterous. Only to find a line of boisterous Celtic fans already snaking around the arena. The place was electric. It was exciting as his first NBA championship. When he was a rookie making history, ducking into the Garden, he remembered what it felt like 7 years before, when the team first pulled together to win it all. Suddenly, Russell felt the pressure. His nerves were jumping. As soon as he entered the locker room, he ran to the toilet and yacked up dinner just like the old times. Then he busted down the stall door and charged back into the locker room, shouting to his teammates, "We're going to win, guys. We're going to win." Bill Russell had finally made the connection between feeling pressure and success. To play well, he not only needed his nerves, but fed off of them to fuel his passion for the game, his love of competition, his focus on the task at hand. The Celtics won their 8th straight title. I'm trying to think of a ritual that I've had before starting something really high pressure. But to be honest, I don't feel like I have been in a situation where performance is necessary. Like the craziest thing that I've felt pressure in is when making sales. But sales always came uneasy because I know what I have, I know what I can offer, and I know the results that I can deliver. So I honestly don't think I have ever been in a situation where I've had so much pressure to the point to throw up. You know what I mean? Like I simply don't. Okay, and it continues. Great performers do something so special. that most of them don't even know they're doing it. It's a frame of mind, a kind of exceptional thinking during a performance that involves no thinking. Many Hall of Famers have no idea that they're exceptional thinkers. Russell, like the best old school athletes and their equivalents in every other field, just did what came naturally. Studying the science of performance enhancement, though, allows us to understand what Russell did intuitively over most of his career and apply it to improve performance intentionally. We can now teach his kind of thinking to everyone. No, I'm not talking about learning how to be sick to your stomach. I mean, learning how to use your biology in your favor. When someone comes to see me about performing better under pressure, I don't prescribe stress management. There are a lot of psychologists who make a good living teaching stress management, and there are a lot of people who need that type kind of counsel. But at high levels of business, medicine, entertainment, and sport, learning how to relax when the pressure is on will not improve performance. In many cases, it will cause slumps like Bill Russell's. If Bill had come to visit me, I would have coached him to get nervous. That's crazy, right? Being a clutch player means thriving under pressure, welcoming it, enjoying it, making it work to your advantage. I can teach you how to do this, but first you have to retrain some instincts. And that will require understanding two things. One, everything that your body does to you when pressure is on is good for performance. Two, pressure is a different form of anxiety, nervousness is different from worry. Okay, so come again. So pressure is different from anxiety, and nervousness is different from worry. Nervousness is different. I haven't been nervous in forever. Like, I don't remember the last time I was nervous. I honestly don't remember the last time I was nervous. I really don't. And we continue. Butterflies are normal. What is really happening to the body? Like almost every animal, humans have bimodal sympathetic or parasympathetic nervous systems that have evolved over thousands of years. One stimulates the heart, lungs, eyes, and muscles. The other suppresses them. This is very true. This is what I studied in my personal training certification. We are taught these things, which is the exact reason that I liked this book. It's because it explains to you performance from a scientific standpoint. One prompts basic bodily function, such as digestion and processing water and waste. The other shuts these systems off. They work in tandem. The sympathetic is crucial for finding food, being on the lookout for dangerous predators, and defending against enemies, while the parasympathetic system keeps the body fueled, warm, working efficiently, and prepared for reproduction. When one turns up, the other turns down, and vice versa. Under pressure, the brain switches the body to red alert. This activates the sympathetic nervous system, and energy is redistributed from parasympathetic tasks to maximize sympathetic tasks. And here we have what the body does. The mouth goes dry, sometimes called cotton mouth, because the body is channeling effort into tasks more important than producing saliva. We don't need extra spit to sink a free throw at the buzzer. The sensation of butterflies occurs in the stomach, resulting from excess stomach acid because the digestive system is shutting down. During a major presentation to the board, who's eating lunch? The stomach cramps because the stomach lining is shrinking. The body has stopped producing bile and is trying to get rid of any remaining food. Bill Russell was a textbook case. Sweat flows, a safety mechanism to prevent the body from overheating. Even an audition for the New York Philharmonic is not worth boiling vital organs. Hands, feet, or knees begin shaking. That's the body sending faster motor signals from the cortex through the motor neurons out to the extremities, which will be running, throwing, illustrating, acting, keyboarding. The heart beats faster to get more blood through the arteries carrying nutrients and oxygen to the working muscles and brain cells so they can perform at a higher level. The eyes dilate and vision becomes more acute. The mind races, processing greater amount of information in a shorter amount of time. All of these adaptations are the body's way of making us perform more efficiently when we're under the gun. When humans face stress, we are hardwired to work to respond favorably. Our bodies just know what to do. Quicker hands and feet, more oxygen and fuel to our muscles, greater visual acuity, increased mental capacity, Sounds like a pretty good formula for coming out on top, doesn't it? So, whether you are running the 100-yard dash in the Olympics, trying to get 100 stitches into a patient's heart within a minute, getting your fingers to play the allegro in a Mozart violin concerto, or pulling off the biggest sale of your career, why would you want to be more relaxed? Relaxation teaches your muscles to lose tone. Your brain has to be passive. You cannot win gold medals without muscle tone, nor can you perform at your utmost, with other parts of your sympathetic nervous system switched to slow. Most people experience fight or flight symptoms, and bam, the performance is overwhelmed by feelings of anxiety. But arousal and anxiety are not the same thing. You simply have been conditioned or taught to treat them as equals. They're not. Loving the uncertainty and eliminating anxiety. The physical symptoms of fight or flight are what the human body has learned over thousands of years to operate more efficiently and at the highest level. Anxiety is a cognitive interpretation of that physical response. Huh, this is interesting. So, okay, the physical symptoms of fight or flight are what the human body has learned over. Okay, so the physical symptoms of fight or flight are part of performing at our best. And anxiety is the cognitive interpretation of that physical response. So it's not anxiety what we're feeling. We're simply feeling the physical symptoms of our body preparing to function at its utmost capacity, at its higher level, highest level. It's crazy, right? Most people have come to believe that anxiety and stress go hand in hand. That assumption, however, is dead wrong. Stress need not produce anxiety. Once Bill Russell figured out the connection between his body's physiological preparation and his performance, he actually was relieved to be throwing up before his big game because he recognized it as evidence that he was ready to play his best. His best. Butterflies, cotton mouth, and a pounding heart make the finest performers smile. The smile of a person with an ace up their sleeve. Fight or flight symptoms comprise the extra juice they'll need to go up against the best, so they welcome it. Many CEOs have confided to me that what they love most about their jobs are the aspects that make them the most nervous. They definitely would agree with Tiger Woods, who has often said, "The day I am not nervous stepping onto the first tee, that's the day I quit." All the great athletes, musicians, actors, doctors, and business executives I've talked to seem to think the same way. So why does everyone else identify the body's sympathetic response to high-stakes situation with a fear of failure? The confusion tends to stem from childhood, almost as an accident. Here's what happens. This is really important because chances are you also experience this. It is the first time you have to deliver in public. You are 8 years old, playing in your first little league game, giving your first recital, appearing in your first play, or delivering that debut book report from memory before the class. Your body goes nuts, registering all the classic fight or flight symptoms on some level. And it's usually not a higher cerebral level because, hey, you're 8 and you don't process things that way yet. You are wondering, what is happening to me? When you proceed to perform poorly, then you proceed to perform poorly. You strike out 3 times and let the ball roll right between your legs. You blow your lines, you forget the next note, you blank on what the book was all about. The next time you are called upon to perform in public, your body still reacts to the pressure, but you think, the last time I felt this way, I was so awful that the other kids laugh at me. Before you know it, you have attributed poor performance to the body's natural response under pressure. You essentially instructed yourself that the root of the problem was your body's effort to help you perform your utmost. Trouble was, you didn't really have any utmost. You performed badly because you simply were not yet very skilled. You were only 8 years old. Your teacher probably didn't teach you how to prepare your speech. You hadn't practiced enough with your instrument. Some of the greatest athletes in history were lousy at age 8 or much older. Remember, Michael Jordan got cut from his high school team sophomore year. Thus begins of a biggest cycle between physical reactions to pressure and high anxiety. For the rest of your school days and then on the job, whenever you are asked to perform in public and the symptoms of arousal appear, you fill your head with negative thoughts. Notice how the thoughts that you have in your head directly impact your performance. That is why amateur golfers with decades of experience still dread standing on the first tee, or why 50-year-old executives live in terror of every presentation or big meeting with the board. Performing poorly becomes identified with the body's natural invigoration mechanisms. That's a new way of saying it. I never thought of calling them natural invigoration mechanisms. The anxiety gets worse until you finally tell yourself, I have to learn how to relax. And mistakenly, the mistaken identity between stress and anxiety is so ingrained that when I ask new clients to tell me about their experiences performing under pressure, they often respond with a soliloquy of fear. I want to hear about breakthrough moments, the good stuff, but they tell me about choking, doubt, and ducking every opportunity that might activate such awful feelings. No wonder in our culture, few words carry a more negative connotation than pressure and stress. Stress gets blamed for everything that doesn't have an otherwise clear diagnosis. Going gray or losing your hair must be stress. Unidentified pains or headaches, you guessed it, but stress is not the cause. It's how you interpret stress that causes psychosomatic illness. In performance arenas, psychologists call this self-intimidation. You feed your mind with thoughts and instructions that your body is doing something wrong. You tell yourself that you're not going to perform well because of your own natural instincts. You use emotionally exaggerated language, such as, my heart is jumping clear out of my chest. My stomach's so twisted upside down. The knots will never come out. You often say, if only I could just relax, I'd do so much better. You undermine your confidence by creating an irrational fear of yourself. Athletes like Dennis Rodman and John Rocker make a multimillion-dollar living out of intimidating opponents. Most people already are intimidating themselves for free. A case in point and the remedy. In the spring of 2000, a student finishing his master's degree at Rice's University Shepherd School of Music came to me for advice. Jamie Kent was a talented trumpet player preparing to sit for a round of. I'm gonna have to read this one because I totally didn't scan it, so sorry about that. And it says extremely competitive auditions that would determine his future as a professional musician. Jamie's teachers at Shepherd, which was recently ranked above the renowned Juilliard School in New York as the nation's #1 music school, thought highly of his skills and has helped him line up an impressive array of interview performances, from the New York Philharmonic to the Texas Brass. Jamie dove right in. But he didn't land a job, as at the very moments when his future depended on performing at his finest, Jamie racked up a series of subpar performances. When he came to me, we immediately began discussing pressure. Jamie filled me in on the brutal realities of breaking into the world of classical music. Turnover in symphony orchestras is low. Competition is high, particularly in the trumpet section, one of the smallest in most orchestras. He reported how nervous he felt prior to going on stage, how difficult it was to warm up for a big audition with a dozen other aspiring and equally anxious trumpet players awaiting their calls. He told startling stories of the kind of cutthroat antics that you might expect in a tryout camp for a professional football team, but not for a symphony orchestra. Ambitious trumpet players went to diabolical lengths to psych each other out with a combination of fancy playing in the rehearsal room and intimidating stories about musicians whose failed auditions with one orchestra got them blacklisted with every other orchestra in the country. They pointed out flaws to be help to they pointed out flaws to be helpful. That's freaking crazy. Very narcissistic. They built up the competition to increase anxiety. Did you know that he's related to Duke Ellington? They say about one talented candidate. About another, I heard they even brought him a first class plane ticket. Bought him a first class plane ticket. And so it went, according to Jamie. The musician's head games stopped only when it was his turn to audition. But by then his mind was so shaken that the odds of success decreased with every gasp of breath he sucked in to try to calm his nerves. As we talked how he handled the pressure of auditing, it became clear that Jamie had developed a classic case of self-intimidation. He had stated rehearsing less and worried more. He tried to find ways to banish pressure from his mind. At auditions, he Stayed away. Okay, now we're going back to the reading. Stayed away from the warm-up room until the last moment, avoiding out psych-out sessions among the other trumpets preparing for their turns. He took time off from auditioning. He even canceled some auditions for orchestras that would have loved to be a part, that he would have loved to be a part of, because he told himself he wasn't ready. Jamie was mired in the kind of avoidance routines that professionals in many fields fall into when they encounter pressure. Marketers anxiously joke with each other about an impending advertising pitch, creating excuses ahead of time. Executives sneak off for a drink before heading into a presentation to the company's stockholders. Attorneys stay up all night going over needless details for the next day's closing arguments. In each case, arousal is viewed negatively and thus avoided or buried by overwork. Such relief, however, is temporary. When the task resumes, less time is available for last-minute preparation, which only increases the anxiety about the performance. To get Jamie's career back on track, I taught him the same things I've often taught salespeople, attorneys, and executives, whose very success is bound to increase the pressure they're under. To view nervousness not as an obstacle, but as a welcome friend. To practice the fight or flight response in order to learn how to feed off the added emotion. Practicing pressure. How do you know if you're a victim of self-intimidation? I advise my clients to examine a list of their performance choices. Typically, people bothered by butterflies will start avoiding any situation that might stir up their nerves. Jamie Kent didn't like the thought of scheduling auditions, so he limited them. He turned down opportunities in favor of staying home to practice. An attorney will turn down a big case or file for a continuation. A salesman will let a colleague make the call on a client with a reputation for being an especially hard sell. A reporter will avoid investigative assignments that will require cornering people who would rather be not interviewed. An executive will delegate presentations to underlings or turn down public speaking invitations. How many people do you know who have gotten bogged down in a low level job because they can't take the stress that comes with more responsibility or with going on interviews? If you find a pattern where the fear of nerves is lord over what you decide to do in life or work, you probably have fallen into the trap of intimidating yourself. The remedy I prescribe for self-intimidation is to unlink arousal from anxiety. When your body is in a charged state, you must first recognize that anxiety is the result of a psychological misinterpretation of that arousal, and then practice choosing the correct interpretation. This is really important, so I'm going to read this again, okay? The remedy I prescribe for self-intimidation is to unlink arousal from anxiety. When your body is in a charged state, you must first recognize that anxiety is a result of a psychological misinterpretation of that arousal, and then practice choosing the correct interpretation. So pretty much you have to become aware of the arousal sensations. No, not that type of arousal. The arousal of high performance, and you want to interpret it as high performance and not as arousal from anxiety. You know, this is going to sound weird, but there were times where I had an arousal from actual anxiety. I mean, from a really bad situation. And I was determined to interpret that arousal as training to endure high pressure. And to be honest, I believe that that is the reason that I'm not crazy. Because that arousal I decided to interpret as a challenge to myself. I decided to not interpret it as, oh, poor me. And that actually helped me a lot in really high stress situations. Sometimes just explaining the distinction does the trick. As I was writing this chapter, a friend who has been a professional speaker for years told me that she suddenly had gotten a bit shaky at the podium. A couple of weeks before, she actually had fainted a few minutes into a speech, probably the result of jet lag. The next time she took the podium, her ordinary performance anxiety had increased markedly, and it was not one of her favorite performances. The following week, she was scheduled to deliver a keynote speech in Europe at the annual meeting of top executives of a major international firm. for the biggest fee she had ever received. If that wasn't pressure enough, she conceded that she couldn't shake that fainting episode from her mind. She was getting more anxious about the speech by the day. I no sooner remarked on the coincidence that I had been writing earlier about how so many people identified the physical symptoms of stress with the psychology of anxiety. When she said, "That's it, that's my problem," evidently no longer. A few weeks later, she called to tell me that she had been in the top form for her big speech, better than ever. If you know what you're doing, if you're good at your job, the nerves actually can make you perform better. You have educated yourself or worked for countless hours perfecting the skills that make for good performance in your field. You now have to start training yourself to accept that arousal is a good thing. How? You learn to love pressure by performing under pressure. I'm going to repeat that. You learn to love pressure by performing under pressure. You put yourself into extremely competitive auditions that would determine his future as a professional musician. Did I miss a page? 30, 28. Oh my god, I missed a page. Oh, okay, hang on. Okay, I totally missed the page. What happened? Where's my page 31? Oh, here we go. No, no, I didn't. It's here. It's here. Sorry. Pressure situations. You put yourself in high pressure situations in which you get nervous and then practice assessing what the pressure can do for you as an asset. A welcome friend. Pressure often signals an opportunity to excel. That's crazy, isn't it? Pressure often signals an opportunity to excel. That's kind of beautiful. You must practice understanding that by making a conscious association between the nerves and the potential to perform. As an Olympic creed says, higher, faster, stronger. In Jamie Kent's case, the ultimate satisfaction he got from playing music came from moving an audience, giving them a feeling to hold on to without being up himself. A performer is not likely to charge an audience. Jamie would only be playing notes on a page. But with his blood pumping, he could do what the famous jazz musician Joe Sample used to talk about. Just let my raw emotions tell me where to go. When I let that happen, I knew I was going to touch someone else. Once Jamie began to use his pre-performance time to work at creating arousal, instead of trying new ways to avoid his feelings, those high-stress waiting rooms turned into Jamie's playground. While the other trumpet players focused on their anxiety or on increasing anxiety in each other. That's fucking crazy. Jimmy concentrated on feeling the music move him inside, then creating the inspirational emotion he could bring with him into the audition hall to help him make his trumpet sing. He had learned how to enjoy pressure, not only to see what it could do for him, but how much fun it was. Isn't this exactly what kids do when they're practicing a sport on their own? It's the bottom of the ninth final game of the World Series. Two outs, a man on third, and up steps. Here he is on the 18th at Augusta National. The crowd silenced a 10-foot put for $1 million and the Masters. Even playing in the sandlot isn't as much fun unless there's something at stake. We adults must encourage this kind of thinking. We must urge kids at an early age to enjoy pressure and teach them the difference between stress and anxiety. It's something that little kids actually can learn a lot faster than adults, much like the natural ease in which 6-year-olds master new languages. And to be good examples, we grown-ups have to become more mature about our own attitudes towards stress and embrace pressure as a way to enhance our performance. That is why, after all, when we're on the links, we put a few dollars on the match to make it a little more interesting, i.e., to increase the pressure. Why not also fool around with increasing the pressure in various work-related situations, starting with low stakes and working your way up? If you have a speech to give or a presentation to make, try it in front of a few good friends or family members. I guarantee it will get your blood pumping. The next time around, try it out on a few of your colleagues or your department as a trial run before you face a big audience. I'm always amazed when an attorney confesses that he or she prepares an argument to be made in court by sitting in the library with a pad and paper. If you have to address an audience, even a tiny one, you had better rehearse in front of some type of audience. A lot. Astronauts spend months in simulators going over and over the procedures they will be required to carry out in space. not so they will be able to relax in that situation, but to train to use the inevitable physiological response to their advantage, to keep the games sharp. The best golfers in the world like to play for a lot of money, even during practice rounds. During spring training, baseball pitchers Greg Maddux, John Smoltz, and Tom Glavine have been known to put as much as $10,000 on a game of golf before heading to the diamond. Is it any wonder that the Atlanta Braves pitching staff swept almost every Cy Young award for a decade? Campaign managers put their candidates through mock press conferences. Huh, that's interesting. I didn't know that. If the President of the United States rehearses his press conferences and major addresses to Congress in front of audiences made up of top aides and other staffers, shouldn't you be putting in some type of simulating pressure situations? That's totally true. And once you start enjoying that kind of pressure, I advise you to ratchet things up a notch. Incorporate some distractions in your rehearsal. Encourage your audience members to heckle you or ask the toughest questions they can think of. It's rarely smooth sailing. In the simulators at NASA, the flight directors intentionally caused the computers to fail and the shuttle to start spinning out of control. Similarly, Earl Woods often has told the story of how he used to try to distract young Tiger during their rounds in the course. When his son was in the middle of a swing, Earl would yell at him, insert his shadow onto the kid's line of vision, peg golf balls at him, do anything to throw off his game. He said his tricks annoyed the hell out of Tiger and often affected his swing or shot. But then one day, when he tried to distract his son, Tiger looked at him, smiled, and then proceeded to hit the ball a mile. Earl Woods knew that his game of distractions was over. Tiger knew that nothing his opponents, the fans, or the press fired at him on the course could be worse than what his father had done to him. That's crazy. In summary, practice, practice, practice. I have worked with clients who have spent 15 years intimidating themselves or avoiding pressure, who expect to turn themselves around in a few days. I'm pretty good at what I do, but not that good. Breaking bad habits takes time. In fact, the research on what it takes to break an old habit and learn a new one indicates that such a transition could take thousands of trials. And always remember, the only time top performers get worried is when their heart is not racing. Unless you learn to love pressure, to perceive stress as an advantage, you are unlikely to enter the ranks of exceptional performers. Jamie Kent, by the way, turned it around. He is now an award-winning trumpet player in the Texas Symphony. He also has played with the American Symphony Orchestra. He also has played with the American, okay, blah blah blah, and the Denver Philharmonic. He's even performed for the president. I just received a nice holiday card from Jamie in which he mentioned how much he now enjoys playing to a packed house, particularly with people in the audience he needs to impress. So start practicing. Learning to love pressure is essential to becoming the kind of exceptional thinker for whom overachievement is a way of life. And in the next chapter, I'll explain precisely what I mean by exceptional thinking. Isn't that freaking amazing? So I'm gonna tell you something. Don't forget to subscribe and like the video. These are the type of videos that I post once a week. So these are member only videos because I want the members to have special content, you know. Not that I don't think all of you guys are special. So this one I am making available to you guys, and all this content is pretty much content about self improvement. That's all that we're gonna be doing in the members only. You know, I literally used to live this book, you know, and it sucks that at this point in my life, I don't have much to show for it. I really don't. But if it wasn't for this material, honestly, I don't think I would have survived gang stalking. I forced myself to interpret a lot of the gang stalking situations as challenges to sustain pressure. And look, honestly, this book was the one thing that saved me because I got to learn my nervous system. Not that I didn't know it already, but I understood high performance, and I told myself I have to use all of this to my advantage somehow because gang stalking was something that I wasn't able to stop, that I didn't understand yet. However, I understood that it was how I reacted to these things that would make me or break me. And it was only because of my reading of this book that I didn't go completely insane. So I experienced gang stalking and I thought challenge accepted. And guess what? I was able to understand enough of the gang stalking to get out of it and to prevent people from harassing me. As of now, I'm working on a new career. And as soon as I'm done with that, I'm gonna not be here anymore. I'm still gonna have the YouTube channel, but the only reason that I can keep my head up high is because this book literally is the only thing that has given me hope. And I simply refuse to be anything less than the best I can possibly be. And life is full of uphills and downhills. That's just life, and it sucks that all of this stuff happened to me. But now that I understand it, I can keep moving with my life. So if you're interested in this topic in self-improvement, you could support the channel and grow with me, less than $5 a month, or you can make a donation to my PayPal. There's a link to it in the description of the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you on the next video. Bye.